All right, cool. So we're recording. All right, Julian. We talked just a little briefly about the events earlier in the week with the death of George Floyd and everything. And I know I sent you the questions in advance so you wouldn't get caught off guard or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll just kind of read them to you. I was kind of reading some articles and that kind of thing, and the guy talked about time when he was a young gentleman, young kid basically, and kind of first found out, hey, there's really a difference between black and white people in America. And just wondering if you had ever faced anything similar like that you go, yep, that was the first time I can remember that this really made a difference.
Well, Keith, I'm from a pretty well-to-do area in Michigan, in Rochester.
Yeah.
So I kind of learned that at a very young age.
Okay.
That it was a big difference. I'd probably say the biggest time I noticed it was I was 11, and my mom had dropped me off at this corner store by my house, and I was walking back to my house with one of my white friends. His name was Steve, and I'll never forget. There's a dirt road, and the guy was kind of this truck had been passing us for like probably about 6-7 times, and I don't know why. The guy pulls over, spits on me, calls me an N-word, and says I've been calling him names the whole time, like racist, like racist names. And I'm like, my best friend is literally next to me. He's a white guy, and I don't know the names you're even talking about. So, and I had never heard anything. And my buddy's like, crying right then and there, and I'm just kind of like shook and like, you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do. So we go home, and I tell my dad, and he goes crazy. He wants to drive all over Rochester to find these guys and whatnot. But that was probably the first time when I was like, this is kind of an insane situation to be a part of, because I was doing nothing. I was walking around with my buddy, and we had some chips and pop. It was like we weren't even doing anything. So
okay.
from then on, it's kind of been like I've always known from a young age. So thankfully, I've kind of known how to like conduct myself, I guess.
Okay. And by the way, I probably should have done this before, but how about everybody else in the group introduce yourself and say one interesting thing about yourself for Julian, just so he knows who he's talking to. So, Avery, guess who gets to go first?
You picked me to go first. So, yeah, my name's Avery. I'm active in a whole bunch of sports, which have all been canceled right now since, Corona.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. Julian's a basketball player too. So.
Yeah, I have one outside. I got a court.
Yeah, hopefully that's kind of trying to keep you sane.
That and work.
So, Evie, how about you?
I'm Evie, or Evelyn, and I don't know. There's nothing really interesting about me.
She just got her braces off not long ago.
That's interesting. That's a good fact right there.
So, James or Brandy?
So I'm James, and I live on a farm, and a lot of work to do all the time.
Yeah, he big time farm boy.
Mm-hmm.
Still with us, Julian?
His face is frozen.
Well, he definitely froze there. He may be back in a minute. Kick him out and let him back in.
That'd be rude, kicking him out.
Sometimes that's the only way to get around it, but wait. Little action going on.
No, he's gone.
There he is. He's back.
Oh, he's
I
back.
got the worst Wi-Fi in the history of the United States of America, so I got to move around my house.
Weren't you a tech guy? Come on.
That's why I had to move. So let me go on. I'll go outside my front porch because it's right by the office. There we go.
Cool. Did you get to hear James?
Was James the big farm guy?
Yeah, big farm guy.
I heard James.
Okay. And then we got Lynette.
I did not hear Lynette. That's when it cut out.
Okay.
Okay. I'm Lynette Little, and I work for the U.S. Census Bureau.
Oh, okay. That is definitely interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, back to the questions. That same article that I read, basically the guy talked about how he had a white friend who was really a good friend to him for a long time. And then he didn't really go into what happened, but some sort of argument or something came up. And then the guy basically kind of went racial on him and told him off and walked away and all that kind of stuff. And just wondered if you ever faced similar circumstances or anything like that.
Yeah, it's never been like, I guess, face to face or anything like that. But during times like this with George Floyd and, the other people who have been done wrong, you can kind of see, what I've learned, I don't know, on Facebook, you can kind of see who you thought were your friends, kind of say some extra things that you wouldn't expect them to say, and they kind of double down on it. So you kind of just have to cut them out of your life. And I know everyone has opinions, but some opinions I just don't feel are correct, especially if you have details and you have the facts to back it up. So that's probably I would go with. I've never had it happen face to face or anything like that though.
Okay. And then last one out of that same article, the guy said that he had been pulled over numerous times by the police, once even being just I don't know, a couple 100 feet from his house. And the officer wouldn't believe him that was his house and all this kind of stuff. Just wondered if you ever got pulled over for no reason whatsoever or what have you.
Keith, you're actually going to love this. It was me, Randall, and Brendan. And we were coming back from, I don't know if you remember Boston's and how close it was from Art Van.
Yep.
We were coming back from Boston's, and we got pulled over in the Art Van parking lot.
Okay.
And we were going back to Brendan's car, and we were dropping Brendan off. Well, the cop pulls us over. He's like, "What are you guys doing here?" And we're like, "Well, we're going back to our cars." Mind you, we all have our suits on.
Right.
I still have my name tag on. So we're Randall asked, and Randall, it's never easy and simple with Randall. So I'm just praying it just doesn't get escalated such a situation. So Randall's like, "Why did you pull us over?" And the guy was like, "You ran a stop sign about 2 miles ago." And we're like, "Well, why didn't you just pull us over then?" And first of all, we know we didn't run a stop sign, because Brendan was a little, yeah.
Boston's isn't even 2 miles away.
Yeah, exactly. So we're kind of wondering. And then the other cop kind of comes up and he's like, "Is there anything in the car?" And we're like, "No." You literally see we're coming back in suits. So that has happened to me at least 8-9 times. I've gotten actually tackled in my neighborhood because the cop didn't believe I lived 4 houses down. I was walking around my neighborhood at about 11 o'clock just to clear my mind, and I had headphones in. And apparently someone had said someone was, car hopping and vandalizing around my neighborhood. And I live in a pretty nice neighborhood. And I couldn't hear. I had the noise canceling big Beats by Dre headphones. So you can't hear anything with those, which, for $300, that's exactly what you pay for. So I got tackled by a cop, and he was like, "What's in your pocket? What's in your pocket?" I emptied out my pocket. I had my wallet. He's like, "Where do you live? Where do you live?" It's probably about 4 or 5 police officers. And I'm 3 houses away from where my house is. I'm like, "Listen, I live right there." But we don't believe you. I was like, my license is in my pocket. You can see my ID. It says exactly. "Well, who's at home right now?" I was like, "I would assume my mom and my dad are at home, but it's 11:30 at night and they got to work in the morning." "Well, we're going to have proof that you live there." I'm confused. Like, my license isn't enough, but okay, we go there, knock on my door. My dad comes out, has proof. The guy starts asking my dad 21 questions, like, how long have I lived there? How long has my dad lived there? Just questions that just aren't relevant to whatever's going on.
Mhm.
Like, when they asked me, if I was car hopping, I was like, first of all, even if I was car hopping, I wouldn't do it in my own neighborhood. Two, I would have a backpack. Like, I'm wearing basketball shorts and a t-shirt. Like, that's all. So you kind of, as awful as it seems, is you get used to it, and you just try not to, escalate the situation.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for letting us know on that one. Kind of digging into the George Floyd thing. Can you help us, since basically, I mean, let's be honest, guys, we live in one of the whitest states in America. So can you help us understand a little bit maybe about the Black community and how they view the death of George Floyd, maybe differently than what we might view it?
I think with this one is a little bit different than the rest because it's all on camera from start to end.
Mhm.
So there's really no gray area as opposed to, Alton Sterling or Eric Gardner, or, where, there's kind of like a little gray area where they were like, well, what was he doing to cause this? Well, that one, with, Mr. Floyd, it's like, okay, you saw him leave the store handcuffed. You saw him get beat up in the cop car. You see him getting choked out outside. There's no gray area with that.
Mhm.
So, the Black community is like, okay, you guys always want to say, and obviously it's not all white people or all police officers by any means, but everyone always wants to say what caused this. Or if you are just, if you just do everything the police officer tells you, that wouldn't happen. And it's like, he did literally everything you're supposed to by the book from what it looks like.
Mhm.
He complied, he was arrested, and he still gets killed. He still gets murdered. So we're almost looking like, and you see all the looting and the rioting and whatnot. It's like, we have done everything you guys have asked of us in that situation, and it's still backfired.
Mhm.
So we're kind of thinking of it as like, and no way do I condone the looting, the rioting, or the breaking of the stores, but it's like, we've done everything you've asked. We've quietly protested. We've taken a knee. We've done everything that's asked, and nothing works. So the community is like, well, you're gonna have to hear us if we're breaking in the stores. You're going to have to see us if we're stealing from, Target, Walmart, because this is how these are billion-dollar corporations, and no one wants to see Target lose everything. No one wants to see Walmart. So you're going to end up paying attention to those things, which sucks because it's like it becomes George Floyd and think situations like that become the background of what is what actually is going on.
Mhm. Okay. Anybody have any questions as we go? Remember, you can jump in with a question if you have one. The tragedy with George Floyd is about as clear cut as it can possibly be. We just mentioned that, especially when it comes to injustice of this whole situation. How do you separate cases that are like this, that are just truly unjust and there's just no gray area at all, to maybe something that might have a legitimate explanation? The guy really did pull a gun on a police officer, or this or that, whatever. How do you kind of separate those kinds of scenarios?
It's gotten to the point where you don't even know if you can separate it because, Keith, you know me, I'm one of the nicest people you can be around. And I don't really like to get into stuff like that. But you see, like, Dylan Roof, who did the South Carolina shooting, and then the guy who, shot up Batman. And you see those guys got to go to jail safe. They made it to prison safely. And it's like, okay, you see that situation. And then you see, let's say, Eric Gardner, who was selling illegal or cigarettes outside of a store, and he gets killed. It's like, and the only time I can warrant that is, okay, that's literally your last ditch effort is to kill someone. But even then, it's like the police, I feel, have every weapon necessary to not kill someone. They give you batons, they give you mace, they give you a different spray. You have to be there for a physical combat. So for them to pull a gun out, like, I just think it's kind of like the easiest way out. Like, we're just not going to deal with this. We're not going to do what we were trained to do. Like, if there's 8 cops and there's me with just my hands, you can have 3-4 cops subdue me. I'm a big person. I'm 6'4", 300 pounds. Like, you don't have to, you can mace me, you can tase me, you can do all those things, and I will be fine to go to jail. So I just think I don't think any situation warrants being murdered or being shot, because they have so many weapons that can subdue a person.
Okay. Any thoughts, guys? Questions? We're moving along. How can we better understand injustices that the Black community faces? And like, what are some things you think we can do about them?
I think the number one thing is just simply ask. I mean, I know you guys, like this right here, Keith, I think is huge. Just trying to understand where we're coming from. Like you know, I think like where you guys are from, like you said, it's a predominantly white area. So you guys might not have that situation where you can just go down the street and ask a Black guy, like, hey, what do you think about this situation?
Mm.
I think if you guys, at least up here, you know, with Detroit, Flint, you know, the rougher areas, I think the white areas, they're, at least from my experience, I have friends texting me now 3-4 times like, hey, what should I do? What do you think about this situation? At least they want to be more informed now.
Mm.
I can, like, you know, as opposed to like, hey, this is what happened, this sucks. You know, I have people who have they went down to Detroit yesterday and, you know, protested. And that's all we really want. Just ask us what we think and ask us what we can do to make the situation better. Like, you have a lot of the athletes are standing up right now. Like, it's nothing, it's not going to be changed overnight, obviously.
Right.
But the more people that have the power that speak up, I think the more people will listen. Like, if you have the Tom Brady's, the bigger people in sports say something, more people are going to listen, as opposed to just not saying anything at all.
Okay. And just kind of a follow-up question, how does it make you feel when, you know, people are stepping up to you going, hey, what can we do? How can we help? How does that, because I know we could go back and just say, you know, for years, you guys have been facing this as a community. Does that help with healing in any way? How does that make you feel in that regard?
Well, I had, like I said, I told you, a couple friends, and I texted about 3 of them back this morning, just saying, you know, thank you and I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's much love that you guys are even willing to reach out and kind of know what, you know, I've gone through, what, you know, my Black brothers and sisters are going through. And it's just more or less like, it's very much appreciative, because a lot of people don't, at least around here, don't really think white privilege is a thing. And as much as we don't want to acknowledge it, it's definitely a thing. Like, I've been with my friends who have done the exact stuff that I've done and have gotten not in trouble. Nothing's happened, but I've gotten in trouble for it. They've done worse things and I've gotten in trouble. So for them to just reach out and try to understand it and kind of, you know, put on, you know, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, like, this is not okay. I've had friends donate to, you know, Black Lives Matter and whatnot. So it's just trying to figure out what they can do to make it better on, you know, people that they're around.
Okay. Let's see. This might be kind of a similar question, but how can we be helpful in bringing forgiveness and reconciliation to cases of injustice?
Oh, that's a tough one, actually. Only because it's like, I don't know if people are willing to forgive right now, if that makes sense. And being around, you know, all you can do is just keep putting it out there, kind of keep it in the light. You don't push it to the background. Just keep it in light, like how you're doing, like how you're having them talk to someone. Try to, once a month, just kind of bring that up so it doesn't get pushed back. So the next time this happens, which unfortunately we all know it's going to happen again, because it hasn't stopped happening.
Mm.
We just don't want to be, like they said, another hashtag.
Right.
So it's gotta keep, it's gotta be a situation where it keeps being talked about. Like, we can't forget about this by, next Friday, then a month down the road, it's the same situation. And that's for an unarmed white person, an unarmed black person, an unarmed Mexican, anyone. That's just anyone. It just has to be a topic that keeps being approached and talked about.
Right. And it might be a little bit of a difficult question to answer, because in some respects, I'm asking one individual to speak for the entire Black community, and across the lines in the Black community, you're going to have various viewpoints too, so trying to figure out, who's going to be more accepting of forgiveness or reconciliation, things probably hard on you to be able to make that kind of an answer. So, last question, while we're probably never going to take injustice as far as the situation with George Floyd, how can we make sure that we're not being unjust to, like, the Black community, to friends that we have at college or whatever?
And it's a lot of the same answers, Keith, honestly, because to me, and this is going to sound like kind of like easy, but it's not easy. It's just, like I said, talk to them. Like, when this happens, don't turn a blind eye. Don't just say, oh man, hey, I know, like, this is going on, this sucks, and then that's the end of it. Like I've had my friends, text me repeatedly, be like, I can't believe this is going on. Is there anything I can do? Like, do you want me to go to a protest with you? That goes a long way. So they know that like, as a Black man, that they're still your friends. Because a lot of people will be quiet on these situations. So then you don't really know, like, hey, are you nervous to talk about it? Or do you not want to talk about it? Or, like, what's going on? Like, I lost, a solid amount of friends because I've spoken up about it. And, I've had a lot of people like, oh, riots and looting isn't going to help the situation. And it's like, you're absolutely correct. But right now, we don't really care to help the situation, if we're being honest. Like, we just want you guys to listen, be like, hey, this is, excuse my French, effed up. Like, this is a really messed up situation and a really messed up time in 2020, that this is what we have to talk about. You guys are mad about people protesting. You guys are mad about kneeling. And a week and a half ago, we had people protesting the Capitol in Lansing because they couldn't get a haircut. But the same situation 2 weeks later, an armed Black man gets killed, and we're getting maced, we're getting rubber bullets. It's like it's a double standard. But as long as we have people like, as long as my friends, and I know my brother feels the same way, it's like, hey, speak up, use your voice, use your, for lack of a better term, your white privilege to say something. Okay. Use it, because I don't think nothing. At the end of the day, you're going to find out who is your friend and who's not in these situations. And if you lose friends in this situation because you speak out for people that you really ride with, you that are really down for you, then that is what it is.
Okay.
Like that's how I feel, at least.
What what would you say is maybe in your opinion, the most effective ways for us to speak up? Because I'm like, just slapping something on Facebook is one thing, or Twitter or whatever, but are there more effective means than just doing things like that?
I don't like, I guess, do you guys, well, Keith, I don't even know where you live at in Iowa. So I don't know if you're close to civilization. I don't know. Like,
I'm about an hour from Des Moines, and Des Moines been having Des Moines been having looting and riots for the last 2 nights.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So I don't know where you're located in Iowa. Like, I only know 2 cities in Iowa, and that's Des Moines and Ames. And that's the only 2 places I know there. But, like, in that situation, like, I don't want to say go drive an hour and 15 minutes, obviously, to go, ride and loot with people. But hell, I mean, buy a t-shirt that kind of supports the movement. Just do little things like, the I Can't Breathe t-shirts are like $15, or, even when you're on Twitter, like donate to something, or, just tell someone, like, tell anyone, like, if they need to talk, they can talk to you guys. Just be like, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I would like to be more educated on the situation. Because I don't want to assume that all people, the reason you guys are doing this is just for, to get back at people. Because that's not what this is about. It's just simply so people will listen to us.
Okay.
And I know it's an awful, like I said, I don't condone it by any means, but it's better than killing someone, if we're being honest. Like, I don't like, it's better than, we got to kill, 6-7 people, but you're looting that and you're doing Target, they're going to get their money back. It's Target. Target's a $1 billion corporation. You're doing Walmart. Walmart makes $1 gazillion in one day. So I don't disagree. I don't agree with it, but I see why it's happening. But as to answer your question, is just to like do little things like, buy a shirt. I see petitions online. Sign a petition. Donate like $5-10 to what's going on, and just keep informed about it. That's the biggest thing. Keep informed about it.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Julian? Because we've come to the end of mine. Whether it's a personal question or something we've been talking about.
This sounds like a group project where no one wants to say anything.
Trust me, I have not had to hit mute once during Bible study because I was just like, oh my goodness. Avery, did you have a question?
Have you gone and protested?
Actually, I did earlier today.
Now,
what's your question?
So now, have you seen in person the rioting and that kind of thing about it?
Not in person, because today it was in like 3 different areas, and like one was like Royal Oak, which is like 20 minutes from where I live. It's a pretty nice area. I haven't seen any of like the looting and the rioting in person, but and I don't think I really ever want to, obviously, because there's too many people for not enough police. And the way I've seen police handling the situation, you've seen, like, I don't know if you saw what happened in Flint yesterday, Keith. I don't know if you saw that. Well, the police chief and the force up there, they took their mask off, they set their batons down, and they walked with the protesters.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, they were like, hey, we're right here with you. And Flint is one of the most dangerous cities in the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it's the #1 small capital murder town in America.
It is.
So that just tells you that it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
That shows you that it can be done. And the police were listening. They're like, hey, we get it. Like, we don't want to deal with rioting, looting. We don't want to deal with one bad cop, 2 bad cops during this. Like, we want to listen with you guys. So tell us. The chief was like, tell me what you need us to do. Mm-hmm. And they talked about it. They marched, protested, and it was peaceful. And that's funny because, like, Keith knows this is Flint. Like, there's not a lot of positivity in Flint. Let's just call it what it is. With the water crisis, and so for that to happen up there, that shows me that it can be done. So the fact that police that other cities and people for that matter, it's like, hey, you try to go to there, and a lot of cops are, stubborn and they have their own ways. But if you want change, I believe it can happen. Yeah, moral stories. I haven't been a part of that craziness. The ones I went to was peaceful.
Any other questions, guys? I think that's it, Julian. Thank you very much for joining us, man.
Man, anytime you need me, I got you. Anytime you need me.
All right, I'll let you know next time I'm coming to Michigan whenever it opens up again.
Yeah, we don't know when that's happening.
Yeah, I was hoping for this fall, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So.
Yeah. I appreciate you. Be safe down there.
All right, we'll see you later.
All right.
Thank you.
No problem.
So what did you guys think? What did you guys hear? Anything
He's
interesting?
a pretty good person.
Huh?
He seems like a funny person.
Yeah.
He is. He's a gentle giant. I mean, he's 6'4", 300 pounds. He's a big boy, but he's a big teddy bear is what he is. Last time I was back to Michigan, I intentionally went to where I knew he was working, and he saw me coming from a long distance off, and he's just like gets his arms open, and I get this big giant hug from him and all that stuff. So yeah,
What did he
what's that?
call you just to open up? He called you a name. Was it like
he
Uncle
called me
Dad?
Uncle Dad. At the store, he used to make fun of me for my shoes because he's like, that's such like a dad thing to do or whatever, you know. And then all the younger employees, the ones that came in after me and that were younger than me, I would always watch over them and keep an eye on them because I wanted to make sure that it's a rough business, so I wanted to make sure they did okay. And so he just started making fun of me and just called me Uncle Dad. So it stuck. So yeah, when I asked him to do that, he's like, anything for you, Uncle Dad. All right.
You know, it's really sad that he feels like he doesn't have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when he said the rioting and looting is so that the Black people can have a voice, that just rocked me to my core. Why wouldn't they have a voice?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that, you know, here in Iowa, I think everybody has a voice. Doesn't matter what your color is. And on the TV the last 2 nights, I don't know his name. It's 3 names. He's the Black guy that used to be on the city council.
He had a white rag.
He wears the white whatever, because I think he's Muslim. And on Friday night, he was begging people to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And last night, he was begging parents to come get their kids and take them home.
And
Yeah, I saw that.
that was also the Bishop Knight or Bishop King or something like that was also on there. So they said, what could we do to help? And he said, parents, come down here and pick up your kids.
And nobody did. And that's what was really strange. Because then they came back to him and they asked, how many have come picked up their kids? And he said, no one. So I wondered then if that meant the people that were protesting weren't from around here. Because when he was taking on a dialogue Friday night in person with this youngster, I'd say maybe 22-ish, that kid wasn't listening to him. And I thought, this is one of the biggest Black community leaders we have. And you're ignoring him like he doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't know who he is. Maybe you're not from around here. But I really felt that he wasn't heard. This representative at the state level wasn't heard yesterday or Friday night either, for that matter. And that surprised me.
It kind of surprised me at how many like representatives, but leaders went out there trying to stop it, trying to calm it down, but it just got worse.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, last night was, tonight I know they put in a curfew.
Right.
But last night when they go to the Capitol and then they get pushed off the Capitol and then they go to a bridge and cars are trying to turn around in the middle of a march and police are throwing tear gas and it's crazy mess. It's
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, you realize that bridge? I don't know if you've seen the pictures that Isaac has just posted recently, but that's the same bridge. Like Isaac was there a couple of days ago taking pictures in Des Moines.
Huh.
And that's the same area that the riots were taking place in. So
I would hate to have a business down there.
I know.
Yeah, that would be rough.
I
So-
mean, I can understand like police and courthouses. I going after other people's buildings.
That tire place. Why in the world would you break out every window from a tire shop?
I mean, you're hurting the community more than you're. Because why is the state or the police really going to look at a small, tiny business?
All right, I just sent a text message to our next guest. We'll see how quickly they get on.
And see, I've dispatched for law enforcement. I've actually answered 911 phones and sent officers and ambulances and fire trucks. I didn't like that job that well. And so I know there can be bad apples in law enforcement, but my niece is a deputy in Scott County. My brother is an officer on the Omaha PD. They're good people. I respect our law enforcement here in town. It just seems like, how do we protest the unjust killing of someone without making all cops the bad guys? You know what I mean?
When he talked about the city of Flint, I don't know if you've seen any of it on the online, but the head police guy basically said, "Look, guys, we get it. We hate dirty cops too. What can we do?" And then that's when they all said, "Hey, join us with the protest." And so all the cops took their helmets off. They were hugging people. They were walking to wherever the protest was going. And the whole thing was peaceful start to finish. And I'm just like, that's the way you show the rest of the country how to do it, because that's just, rest of it's crazy.
I mean, that's hard to do though. When you're like, if I take this stuff off and it does go violent, my job is to make sure nothing gets hurt and damaged. Well, where's my stuff now?
Right.
So it's one of those, once they take their stuff off, they're hoping for sure this has to stay peaceful or else we're screwed. We could be seriously hurt if someone just comes up and says, "Oh, you're a cop," and throws a brick at your head.
Yeah, they delivered bricks to Des Moines today. Did you hear that?
No.
Some truckloads of bricks came to Des Moines today and that may be why they shut Walmart down early.
That would make perfect sense.
There was a truckload of bricks delivered to Des Moines today, which is horrifying if you ask me.
I mean, maybe if they were to prepare where the bricks broke, maybe it's a good thing.
But not on a Sunday. You need those on Monday.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys from Lowe's in Omaha brought 320 sheets of plywood down to the old market area today to make sure they could board up all the windows of everything that was torn out in the old market yesterday. Which is, to me, that's commendable.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Well, the Friday night we're in the tire place, and there was a bike shop that was putting up boards, and it was one of those. Wow, they have to do that to protect their shop.
Yep. Last night in Omaha, police were actually putting plywood on a Target. I don't know if it's because Targets are from Minneapolis. Their national world headquarters are in Minneapolis. So I don't know if that's one of the reasons they're being picked on more than other companies, but they were definitely getting Target secured.
There he is.
Hey, sorry. Took me
Hey,
a little bit
Officer
to
Matt,
get
how are
out.
you?
Good, Keith. How are you?
Good. We just finished a nice conversation with my friend Julian,
Awesome.
which was I would say good and balanced. He wasn't some crazy guy, which is good, but
Good.
just helping kind of talk about all kinds of issues and things like that. So and I think most of the kids here, right? We got a small crew, but
I
we
think
got
so.
Avery and James and then Evie.
Okay.
So
This is my first time on this, so I don't
On
quite know
Zoom?
what's going on.
okay.
Yeah.
My guess is that my face will be the one you see when I'm talking. And then everybody else's faces are appearing at the top. Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. If you scroll up to the top, you can change the way it views so you can see everybody at once. There's 2 different ways to view.
Okay. Oh, yeah. There we go.
There you go.
There we go.
Cool.
Very good.
All right. Well, and I think you got my questions as well, right?
I do. I
Yeah.
did get your questions.
In advance. So,
Yep.
So I'll just ask you guys you questions, and guys, again, you can chime in with questions for Officer Matt here, and we can ask some at the end as well. So, but we just heard from Julian about everything that took place in Minnesota. Have you ever witnessed, or excuse me, have you ever faced or witnessed injustice in your duties simply because you're a police officer?
Yes. I wouldn't say it's every day, not to the extent of what probably most people think, but I mean, obviously we can see now that law enforcement's targeted nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't, the good thing about Iowa is we don't experience a whole lot of that, which is nice because I was small. And we separate ourselves even more from that now we're in Panora. So, but I've arrested people and interacted with people that say several times they would just refer to me as all police encompassing, you know, whether you're an officer here in Iowa or you're an officer in Florida, it doesn't matter. You're just a cop that does this. So yeah, I mean, that's hurtful because that's exactly what they're, you know, whoever is saying that is, I guess what they'd be standing up for, they're doing to us by putting us all in some big category of just general law enforcement. We're all, I've been called racist several times. Pretty much every ethnicity, doesn't matter which one. I've had a lawsuit filed against me for being racist. Apparently, it was dismissed pretty quickly once they saw the video because it was all a lie, which was good. So yeah, I mean, we do see it here in small town Panora, and I imagine that officers do nationwide, especially in cities that are being attacked right now, and just outright killing of law enforcement just because they're law enforcement.
Okay. Julian was helping us kind of understand the death of George Floyd from you know, the Black community's perspective. How would you say like the police perspective is on, you know, when they see something like that take place someplace else in the nation? You know, how do you guys generally view that?
This one was tough for me. I don't enjoy seeing things like that. And I purposely ignored it for quite a while because I don't like seeing that negativity. I don't watch the news. I try to stay away from that stuff. I like to try to remain as happy as I can, but fortunately you can't ignore this. And I know that's not a good thing to do either. I'm able to ignore COVID pretty well now, which is good. But I did watch the video. I've watched several videos. I've read several articles. After I watched the video, it was absolutely horrifying. That was horrible. Watching several different angles, I cannot figure for the life of me what the reasoning would be behind doing that. I don't know. I think the fact that that officer was charged so quickly would lead me to believe that it was pretty open and shut, and there isn't really any justifiable reason for him to do that. I mean, law enforcement nationwide, I don't know of any agency that it's okay for you to touch the neck, period. I mean, that was driven into us pretty hard. I mean, the neck is a lethal zone, so I can't think of that. So I'm glad that the officers were fired. I'm glad that he's charged. And I think hopefully people see that. I know people still believe that law enforcement get away with things. Not from what I've seen. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm sure that it does somewhere. I haven't seen that personally. Thank goodness. I mean, I've known of some officers that have been either let go or charged with something for things that they did. Law enforcement typically is held to a higher standard, has less rights than civilians, which I think is a good thing as well. But it was absolutely horrifying. The only thing that bothers me with it is some saying that this officer acted the way he did because of the race. That's the issue I have. Because like I said, the body cams from those 4 officers haven't been released as far as I know. There was one body cam video that I saw that I watched, an officer that showed up and he was told to watch the initial vehicle where he was taken out of. So he was far away from what happened. So that video didn't really show anything. So I'm assuming they're not releasing the other videos of the body cams because they're trying to figure out what they're going to charge the other, is it 3 with, I
Right.
think. That's what I'm assuming. So based off of what I've seen, I don't see any evidence that would support that those officers acted based off of his ethnicity. And if we're trying to be unified and equal in everything that we do, then I don't know, unless there's something that I don't know, that I haven't seen. That's one of the things that bothers me, is that some are labeling this horrific incident as racially driven.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody have follow-up questions? I'll go to the next question. There's a lot of, like the average American doesn't understand a lot of the rules that you guys have to abide by. So
Yeah.
like the length of time that it takes for an actual investigation before you can charge somebody, and, you know, levels of force, and, you know, all those kinds of different things. What things might be helpful for us to know about the job of the police so that we can kind of help balance out this idea of injustice? So somebody's yelling and complaining about how long it takes or whatever. What can we know that we could go, hey, wait a second here, you know, let's bring some balance to this?
Probably the biggest thing that I see is not all the time. Typically, law enforcement knows more than what is reported in the media. Maybe not so much law enforcement, but whoever's investigating knows more. So the media lets out a small tidbit of that information, and without knowing the big picture, you're confused as to why things aren't moving quickly or why certain things were done the way that they are. So I would strongly encourage everyone, especially when it comes to our media, which is at this time being run by Satan. I mean, there's very little truth now in what we're being told. Just don't believe everything that you hear. For sure. Investigations and the length of time that they take is very dependent on the circumstances of it. This one surprisingly was quick. So that, like I said earlier, that would lead me to believe that it's all those facts pretty evident to the investigators. Typically murders, you know, I guess I can't speak from any experience because I've never investigated one, thank goodness, hopefully never do. You know, it just depends. Probably the biggest ones that I've worked on, sexual assaults, some of those take months to, I've had one take a year. to they're done very quickly depending on what information you have. Financial crimes can take forever. Just in getting warrants and subpoenas from bank records and statements and things like that. And law enforcement isn't going to release all the information. They're just not. They can't, because you can't let all those facts out while the investigation is ongoing. You just can't. So there's a lot of things that the public isn't going to know. The interesting thing with this one is those body cameras. That'll be interesting to see what was going on. Just from what I saw, I really can't see why they were doing what they were doing. I feel like I've trailed off. What was the original question? Where are we at?
Just balancing out like what the rules that you have to face versus
Yeah.
what we as general Americans would understand, that kind of thing. But I mean, I think you're kind of getting at that. So
yeah, I was going to mention a little bit on use of force. Law enforcement's taught the use of force continuum, which is, they represent you like a big circle. So the first use of force is just simply an officer's presence. Most normal people are deterred by just an officer standing there. Then it would be talking, and then it just continues and escalates around there till ultimate use of force where someone isn't stopping, which would be using a firearm or striking the head, things of that nature. So the law enforcement are supposed to use that force, which is reasonable and no more, which civilians are also held to that standard as well. So reasonable force and no more, which a reasonable man would feel, in a court of law, that was reasonable force to be used. And watching that video, that's not apparent to me or anyone else for that matter. I think in general, the law enforcement community, at least from what I've seen, is standing behind the decision of the prosecutor out of Minnesota, and that is a correct charge, and they're doing what they should do. I haven't seen any law enforcement officer that's opposed to the charge and his removal from his position.
okay. How would you recommend for just people like us who, when we see injustice taking place in the news or whatever, how would you recommend maybe us getting involved to kind of help with that process of bringing justice to where maybe it's not being, where justice isn't being applied just yet?
Definitely not by looting. That's for sure. That doesn't help anything.
Oh, dang, cancel the plans, guys.
Yeah, no looting. That's tough. I mean, watching that video, those people were, they were really trying to convey that individual couldn't breathe, and why they were doing that. And there really wasn't anything they could have done. If they were to intervene, they probably would have been arrested. I'm assuming, or maced at one point. I'm assuming everyone saw the video.
I think most have, yes.
Okay. So in that specific situation, I don't really know what to say there. I guess to be actively engaged in a police interaction. I don't know. That's tough. I know, at least for me, people that are speaking calmly that want to help. And I think that's appropriate, but I guess I don't have a good answer on what we can do. I mean, it's not like we can go to a police department and, help them train on what they shouldn't do. I mean, they should know not to do that, but I don't know. I would assume from this, there's going to be a lot of changes that'll probably take years. I would think this is going to trickle down I would assume that most of that police department is probably going to be terminated at some point, because it sounds like there's a pretty extensive investigation into their the other complaints that were received, things like that. So that's going to trickle up to upper management. I would bet that chief isn't going to be there anymore either. But just I'm saying that, but I don't know that for a fact. But
Well, you mentioned, and it's kind of the next question too. God forbid we ever come across a situation like George Floyd. But if it was just that obvious that an officer was killing a man, basically,
yeah.
I know I felt it, like when as I was sitting there watching the video, I'm like, I want to go knock that officer off his neck. I'm like, I don't care about anything else. Just let the man breathe. I mean, he's on the ground. You just let the guy breathe. And I know I'd probably be arrested or whatever, but what would your recommendations be as an officer yourself? Like, how should we step in a case like that?
I would ask to help. That's what I would do. I would ask to help. What can I do to help?
Okay.
I wouldn't want to give anyone the advice to intervene, because that could go very badly.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would say is this, in my opinion, so this isn't based off of any facts, but incidents specifically like this one are very few and far between.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So, and the reason why I'm cautioning in specifically intervening is, again, 90% of the time we have no clue what's going on in the situation. We just don't know. And I'm not sticking up for these officers in this situation. That's not what I'm doing at all. But a lot of times we are running off very limited information, and we know more of what's going on than just a passerby, and we don't know what is already transpired prior to that that led to whatever point that we are now watching. For example, one night I was working, it was, a night like this, quiet, nothing going on, and I got a call that there was a fight between two men involving a knife and a gun. That's the information I was given. So I get out and have my gun out, and I'm putting people down, telling them to get down on the ground. I did not know that the gun was unloaded in a case, locked in the back of a truck bed with the truck locked. So I would say a firearm wasn't involved whatsoever. I didn't know that the fight was over and the knife was gone and wasn't even in play. So my initial interaction upset those that called me, but they didn't realize that I didn't know what they knew. So, try to keep that in mind. Law enforcement's going to react different. You're going to react different based off of the information that you have as well. So that's what if you actively saw something that initially appeared to you to be incorrect, I would ask to help. That's what I would do. I'd say, what can I do to help? And if nothing else, be a witness. This was videotaped from every angle and body cam. So, we're, I don't know how many cell phones were out there. So, it's law enforcement's videotaped all the time now. So, being a witness is one. That would be not badgering, would be the biggest thing. Just a voice of reason and help, I guess.
Okay. And then last question, how can we help other people know that basically the great majority of police officers are wonderful people? They absolutely hate dirty cops themselves, or foolish cops, or whatever you want to call the guys in this particular scenario. But how can we help other people realize, hey, the great majority of these people are not out to get you? So
yeah. I don't know. I don't know now. It seems to keep getting worse. I don't know what we can do. I hope people realize that. I mean, I guess I don't know what to say with that one.
Okay.
Kind of a downer. I don't know. I guess get to know law enforcement, but I don't know, how to
Okay.
really do that. Like I said, we're fortunate here in Iowa.
Right.
Not that there isn't bad cops here in Iowa, because there certainly is. I mean, just around this general area, not this county, there's been a sheriff that took money from evidence, and there was 2 down in Creston that were involved in a sexual assault and went to prison. I mean, so it does happen. I mean, it happens everywhere.
Hmm.
And I can tell you cops, legit cops do not like that at all. That's why there's so many law enforcement angered over this video, because now, some are going to label all law enforcement that way, and that's not the case. But I don't know how to, I guess, how to change people's minds to that. I don't know.
Okay. On the upside for you, I don't know if you saw what came out of Flint, Michigan, but the officers there, when the protest was starting, the officers basically, they didn't lay down all their weapons, but they took off their helmets and things like that and basically stepped up and said, hey, look, we hear you guys. We hate dirty cops too. What can we do to help? And the crowd said, hey, come join us for the rally. And so they did. And they just went to the rally with them. And that's made its way around social media and stuff. So I know that has had at least some effect for some folks to be able to see, hey, look at how the rally went there, and look at how the police just joined in, because they're stepping forward and saying, we hate dirty cops too, and so
I did see that. Yeah.
From a nationwide perspective, I'm like, well, that's a positive. Not everybody's going to hear it or see it or even take it to heart, but at least it's a step in the right direction, as opposed to the flavor that gets left in your mouth with the guys in Minnesota. So
Yeah, and that's a law enforcement town that's in dire need of more. That was good to see that.
Yeah. Anybody have questions for Officer Matt before we let him go back to work? We have a quiet crowd tonight, so.
Yeah, it usually happens when I show up. So that's too bad.
Well, thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate your time and
Yeah, thanks.
helping us out with this. And we'll see you soon.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
Thanks,
See you later.
Matt.
Thanks.
Bye.
There he goes. So what do you guys think? Any thoughts? No thoughts? Part of the reason why I did this, guys, and we'll just kind of end with this, but is because, well, we'll take it from this perspective. In World War II, the church, the Christian church, did not get involved. They did not step up and speak when all the Jews were being killed during the Holocaust. There was a pastor in Germany who actually called them out on that and said, you guys need to step up and say something, because this is ridiculous. And I think a lot of the times, I think that's maybe one of the sins of the church in America nowadays, is that we don't step up for things of injustice when we see them and speak out and say something about it or whatever. So that's why I kept asking Julian and so on, how do we get involved? What can we do to be of service and to be a help in these situations? So if we were in Des Moines, I might suggest, hey, let's go downtown and do some cleanup, help sweep the streets, help do whatever we can do during the daytime to help with the mess. Just because it would be of service to the store owners or whatever. But anyway, but I just want to challenge you guys in particular when it comes to injustice of making sure that you do not remain silent, that you do speak up. I don't know if you had any thoughts, Lynette, as we were going through anything, or.
Well, I was really happy to hear Matt say that no one knows all sides of the story, but you have to trust that the officers on scene know more than what we know. And there's always more than what the media will tell us. And that made me think about the Bible verse, love always basically believes the best about people. Being a police officer, or like in Matt's case, he's actually the chief of police, which makes his burden heavier than if you were just a police officer. And just a police officer is still a pretty heavy job. I think we need to cut everybody some slack that we don't know the whole story when judging anything, and really start praying more for our frontline, whether it be law enforcement officials or whether it be the guys in the military that have to make split-second life and death decisions. We should be holding them up in prayer a lot more than what we do, because they're doing a job most of us don't want to do. And as for Julian, I really think we need to pray that we will see the different perspectives from the different cultures. I was working really hard to become a multicultural state, but we're failing in that the majority of us still don't know what it's like to have one meal a day and that's it. And it's not that big of a meal. We don't understand where other people come from, and we need to be asking good questions in a humble way to learn and then use it to bring honor and glory to God in how we live every day.
Evie?
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it'd be kind of hard to watch that as like an officer or something like that, because it's not like that happens every day, and it kind of does ruin everything. It's kind of like if you're on a field trip and a classmate does something really stupid, and then it ruins it for the whole entire class. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
the same but different.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. We'll leave it right there, guys. Thanks for coming. I've got it recorded. I'm going to turn the recording off now, I think. I know what I'm doing.